So as she said, my name is Robert Allen. I direct a fantastically awesome team of guys, some from Reaktor and some from HMH. I've been working with HMH for 4.5 years now, roughly, and pretty much from day one, I came in trying to introduce technologies like Mesos and things like that. So HMH, who we are, we're a big publisher. One, we do children and adult literature. Some of the things that you might be familiar with is Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, and a few others that we won't name that have been around for a while, but they know who they are. We also work with the school districts, the educators, the teachers, the parents in some cases, to provide professional services to improve the learning experience, intervention services and things like that. Oh, look straight here. So, who am I? I got my first computer when I was 27, and it was a few years before I even started programming. And oddly enough, PHP was brought up in the last talk. That's what I started programming with, because it was the easiest thing to learn with. But in my past, I worked in the oil field. I was an automotive technician. I did carpentry, woodworking. I helped build houses with my dad. I have pretty much a lifelong experience of breaking things. So that's always been where I learned the most. I found that you can read a book and it'll tell you all these stories, but the reality is you're not really learning anything. You don't have experience. Experience is about breaking things. And so for me, I managed to gain a lot of information as this deck is broke. Anyhow, so I managed to learn a lot in my life going through and breaking things. And so with Bedrock Technical Services, the idea was to build a platform that is broke. It will be broke, things break, but the goal is that it doesn't interrupt the customer's experience. And in our case, the customers are the engineers. So people that are building applications, deploying applications. The important thing is it's about degrading, but not necessarily totally failing. And so the strategy is that everything is immutable instances. For instance, we use Mesos to schedule jobs. Mesos restarts those jobs. And when I started working on this, 4.5 years ago, it was me and one other person. Unfortunately, he's in a car accident. He wasn't able to be here, but it sort of looked like this. We had Elasticsearch, we had Mesos, Zookeeper there to support Mesos. And as time went on, it started growing, so we added SaltStack, Aurora, to help schedule jobs, and then Finagle to route those jobs, and then Spark, and then we moved to Linkerd to help with more service discovery, and then we went from using CloudFormation, which was a nightmare, to Terraform, which was another nightmare to get moved off of CloudFormation onto Terraform, and then we needed SSL and encryption, and then we needed artifact storage, and then we needed better service discovery, which led to console, and then we needed to collect metrics. And the point is, complexity grows over time, and the difficulty with this is how do you organize all this in such a way where you've got a team of 5 or 6 people that you're now supporting, in our case, 1,000 jobs for millions of students, and at the peak of our year, which is coming up, by the way, back to school, we'll probably see anywhere from 5 million students being, rostered per day going through our system. We'll see, millions of transactions occurring in this platform, and these things do break. They just, Murphy's Law says what can break will break. I would actually posit that it's more what can broke is already broke. It was broke 5 minutes ago or 5 hours ago. It's already broke. You just don't know it yet. And so you have to engineer and strategize for a system that can degrade, and you really need to be pessimistic about it. As engineers, and when I was writing software, I always hope for the best, right? So you're always writing software or systems and you're hoping for the best, expecting everything to work great, but the reality is it doesn't. And in fact, when it does work, nobody cares. The only time anybody cares is when it's broke, which it's going to happen, So that led to Bedrock. And some of our core assumptions are, A, it's broken. Measure it being broken, measure when it's working, when it's not working, and, keep track of all this. Make everything observable. What does that mean? That means, so we've got 350 engineers that are operating, or they're running 1,000 jobs in our platform. We have to be, transparent, and so we're very open about, yeah, it's broke. And so this story that I'm going to tell you is sort of back to when I was working on the farm with my granddad. They'd send me up there for the summer to get me out of the house because I was always breaking things at home. So my mom and dad, the school's out, they're like, get him out of here, send him to the farm. Well, one summer, my granddad, he tells me, he says, I want you to take that grease gun, I want you to grease every zerk on that combine. And it was actually a combine just like this, 1953 Alice Chalmers Gleaner. So he sends me out there. I know what a grease zerk is. I know how to use a grease gun. It's real simple, right? You just put it on, you grease it. Well, about 10 minutes into this, suddenly he starts screaming. The combine starts spewing out grain everywhere. And it turns out there's one zerk on this whole combine that you're not supposed to grease. And I found it, and I greased it. Yeah, he wanted to send me home right after that. But the point is that if there's something in your system that can be broke by following directions, people will find it. I have a whole lot of stories like this. I've turned forklifts over because I wanted to know. So if I raise the forks all the way up and I tilt them out, will this forklift turn over? Yes, they will turn over. But the point is, the whole point is that, so why do you design a system that can fail? Why do you make a forklift that I can raise the forks all the way up, tilt them out, and it's going to turn over? This doesn't make sense to me. So I'm always exploring these things. And it turns out at HMH, I did the same thing. So one day, it's back to school season. We're all in Dublin. We're from Chicago, but we're all in Dublin. And I'm in the office in my little fortress of solitude, and I decided I'm going to go through and I'm going to work on something because I'm bored. I know how to do this stuff, and yeah, I'm a manager, but I'm going to get back in here. I'm going to work on this. So I'm actually working on a system, and we use Salt, which gives you the ability to run a command on all systems or one system. And you know that thing where you hit the up arrow a few times on the command line, and it scrolls back, and then you backspace and you type the command, command.run reboot. Except it's not the one machine; it's all the machines. Well, that's what I did. So I didn't mean to. I just up arrowed too many times, and I ran a reboot on 258 machines in the whole stack. It was everything. It was all the Zookeeper machines, all the Mesos boxes, everything went into a reboot cycle. Needless to say, there was a bit of panic. I was like, oh, if it was me, I'd probably want to fire me right now, but no, this is bad. And then suddenly, I'm wondering how many people know about this, So I start transparency, right? You're like, hey guys, I just rebooted everything. And first they thought I was joking. By the way, they're the ones that proposed I talk about this. I think it's to get me up here and kind of shame me a little bit. But yeah, it was great. So what ended up happening and why it didn't matter. So because we use Mesos, and Mesos actually, it has preemption. So you can define, production and non-production tasks. And we actually share all the resources across all the stages. Non-production things sort of takes up what's left, so you have production, and then we have a bit of overhead that's there for those inevitable AWS partitions that occur all the time. Those happen a lot, by the way. We only know this because we measure everything. But as all the machines started rebooting, it actually got overloaded with too many reboots on the Salt, because Salt uses these message channels with 0MQ. it actually got overloaded with so many messages, it couldn't issue the reboot to everything. And so that was a bit of a saving grace. And then other machines started coming back. Some of the Mesos agents were actually able to join, but there was a bit of a thundering herd of Mesos agents trying to, to reconcile jobs, and some of them went in the zombie processes. And so we only ended up with about maybe 30% of the entire stack actually coming back like it was supposed to. But fortunately, because we have preemption and we're sharing resources, that 30% was enough to keep all the production tasks running. That was really it was sort of it was the original intent of this was that, production will always run, or production will always take everything right up to the last breath. And that's what happened. No customers, reported any issues. There was no customer production outage. There were a lot of panicked engineers because they were getting alerts, and then, they're like, oh, everything's down in dev. For me, I'm okay with dev crashing. In fact, I encourage my team to just go break it, because I believe that by breaking things, taking those chances and experimenting, that's where you're truly going to learn what matters, right? That's the most important thing. Operating in success day to day in any job that you do gives you no value. None. The value that you get every day in operating any kind of complexity is in the failures, because it's those failures that teach you how to recover, how to manage the stress, how to work with your customers, be it engineers or be the end users. That's the most important thing. Your experience, your ability to become more and more experienced in your careers has nothing to do with your success. It has everything to do with your failures and what you do with them. That's what I've learned throughout all the years as an automotive technician, as a furniture maker, working in the oil field, etc., and working in technology. It's all about your failures. I've seen other failures. When I worked in the oil field, I no longer work in the oil field, I never will. Some of the things you learn, unfortunately, some people don't get a chance to learn those mistakes again. Where I worked in the oil field, there was a lot of, H2S, dihydrogen sulfide. A lot of people like to say that it's an odorless chemical. It's not that it's odorless. It's that it paralyzes your olfactory nerve and you can't smell it. I got out of the oil field when 2 guys failed to actually sniff in the tank. They went ahead of me, they died. It's instant death. I was 5 seconds away from falling into that. That point that I'm trying to make here is you have to balance your risk, right? Some mistakes are too risky to take. Some are okay. You need to assess those things as you go throughout your day and as you go throughout your career. Failure's great, but it has to be in a controlled environment. You can't just haphazardly take chances. So create an environment that you or your team or your teammates can safely fail, safely make mistakes. And that all goes into your design, be it software, be it pull requests, code review, separate environments where you can actually spin things up, break them, etc. A lot of it's behavioral design. That's a big part of what we do in our team. Our motto is sort of, we don't make Bedrock safe for engineers, or I'm sorry, that's wrong. We don't make engineers safe for Bedrock. We make Bedrock safe for engineers. The point is, when we want engineers to be able to go into the environment, do whatever they want, and they may break their things, but we try to build it in a way where they can't break other people's things. We want them to take chances. We want them to experiment. A lot of this can be done with, behavioral design, meaning make the wrong things hard. A lot of times the wrong things are the easy things, and therein is, that's your catch-22. Sometimes you as engineers have to make the wrong things hard, and that requires adding steps or you name it. whatever it is, whatever works for that particular problem, and make the right things the easy thing. People will always follow the path of least resistance. And it goes back to those core assumptions. Keep your strategies balanced, be transparent, observable, measure everything, and know that it's already broke somewhere. You just don't know it yet. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. That was super interesting. Let's do some Q&A. First of all, do we have any questions in the room at the moment? Stick your hand up if you do. There's one at the front right here. Get a mic.
Hi. What's your favorite example of making the wrong things hard?
The wrong thing's hard. Thinking. We have a few of them. So one of the things we have this thing where engineers want to SSH into the containers that their jobs are running because they think they need that, and they think that they'll actually diagnose and solve their problems better. We've actually taken that away. There's no way that ever we won't even do it. I mean, we could get into the containers, but we won't even do that. That's a situation we force them to build their diagnostics into the application, into their logging facilities and things like that. If we allowed them to just SSH in, they would never bother with collecting metrics, collecting logs, etc. And so we've made a lot of opinionated decisions like that. No, you cannot SSH into your container. No, you can't do this. You have to provide yourself the tools in your application to be able to do these things. That's probably my favorite.
Thanks for a great question. Do we have any more in the room? Don't be shy. Stick your hand up. I'll take a couple from online, and you can think about that. There's actually a comment rather than a question. M says, I love your idea of breaking things. I try to tell my people that when applying new tech, one of the crucial tasks is to break it. Unfortunately, some people think it is a failure. Then we have a question from Timo, which is, do you have the problem that if you design for things to break, it takes too long to get even the happy path implementation to work? Like a variation of analysis paralysis.
Some might argue that some of the things that we've built in this platform has taken longer than it maybe should have, but really you have to understand that happy path isn't really what you're striving for, right? You're striving for a solid, sustainable, reliable platform. Reliable doesn't mean that it's not broke, doesn't mean that it's not going to break. Reliable means that, when my engineers go home at night, I don't want them to have to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning and reboot a system or respond to the logs being, too full. It's about them also having a quality of life. And these are the things that you have to really design for. Yes, the engineer, our engineers, they went from literally 6 months in infrastructure delivery. So when they decided they needed to start an application, when this project started, it was up to 6 months, and in some cases 14 months before they could actually launch that application in development. We're not even talking production. Now they're down to roughly an hour. So you have to start with a reasonable point of success and define what that looks like, and then you iterate through it. But you also keep in mind that you're not just building for that one success. You're also building for the people that are operating, right? Because their life matters. It's not just your customer. It's from end to end. And if you're not taking care of the people that maintain this, it's just going to fall down anyway because they're not going to give a shit. So you have to think about the whole thing from start to end.
Thank you. Any more questions in the room?
One thing I would comment about could you read that comment again?
Oh, absolutely. Let me bring it up. It says, I love your idea of breaking things. I try to tell my people that when applying new tech, one of the crucial tasks is to break it. Unfortunately, some people think it is a failure.
Right. So I think even 3 years into this with my team, I think there's still a lot of growth that we can have there, right? We still have we still have this reluctance to have things. We still strive, I think, sometimes for too much perfection. In the last talk, he talked about quality being, the y-axis and, providing value being the x-axis. But I believe that I believe that you transition from quality becomes providing value, but you have to get to that point. You can't always just set out for quality, but at some point, you're diminishing results if you're just shooting for quality or shooting for, value. Sometimes that quality also becomes that value, and you have to balance that out. And part of that is getting the team to release that fear, let go of the fear of making things run. I find satisfaction when the team writes a postmortem, or we call them RFOs, reason for outage. The company never had those before we started publishing them, and I find a lot of satisfaction and when they write these, because the detail, the thought that they put into it as a team, and then they're also reading that out to the entire organization in an open manner without fear or or any kind of repercussions. So many companies have this culture of fear and blame, and as leaders, all of us are leaders in this. Not whether you're a manager or a project manager or an engineer, it doesn't matter. You have to be leaders in not creating a culture of blame. You have to be okay with people failing. You also have to coach them through it. You can't have somebody making a mistake over and over again. That's a coachable moment. But people have to have the freedom to make mistakes. If you don't do that, then you end up in a culture where people are afraid to do things. And if they're afraid to do things, you're never going to innovate. So
I have a question that I think is kind of related, because I think failing can feel really awful. It's like the worst thing that can happen, right? Are there any tips for how you can kind of individually get more comfortable with failing?
Yes, it takes practice. I mean, it takes practice. I'm quite okay with it now. And we poke fun of it a lot. The team and I. But yeah, I've got like I said, I have a long history of breaking things. My granddad, when I got sent to my grandparents' house, he was at the door. I was not his favorite grandchild because, in fact, I remember him trying to ship me off to my other grandparents one summer because I broke the lawnmower he just bought. And it was one of those situations, I'm like, I wonder if it'll let me do this, will it be okay? Well, it wasn't okay. It broke. Another one of those things where they designed it where it would do something that, maybe common sense should have told me not to do that, but I did it anyways because it could. It wasn't good. Yeah, so. But I have a long experience with breaking things. I'm okay with it.
I have a question that I think you kind of answered, but perhaps you can go further. And it's anonymous online. Blowing things to parts is a great way to learn. When did you learn this skill? Did it start with your granddad?
Actually, maybe when I was like 9 or 10. So I always got into my dad. Actually, it was younger than that. So 5 years old. My dad said, "Those clippers, don't mess with the clippers." And I wanted to know how the clippers work. I was like 5 years old. I took the clippers apart, and then my dad comes. He was a truck driver, and so the big truck starts driving up the driveway, and I panicked trying to put these clippers back together, and I ended up dropping it, and it went through my foot. And I was so panicked, I just pulled it out, and I pretend like nothing happened, put it all together. Of course, my dad knew this, but he never said anything. Fast forward a couple of years, he decides to lock the toolbox so I can't get the tools. Well, then that's when I learned how to pick locks. So I was like 8 years old, I was picking the locks in the toolbox. I don't know if he knew I was actually doing that. I imagine he did, but the point is that it got me to put the tools back because I was more worried about him finding out I could pick locks than finding out I was using his tools. So I always put his tools back after that. So anyway, he taught me a lesson to that.
I think, yeah, picking locks, life goals.
Yeah, it's great. It's great fun. It was actually one of the jobs I did for 6 months was, breaking into people's houses legally. And yeah.
Awesome. I don't have any more questions online, so I think we're going to wrap this up now.
Grand.
Thank you very much for
Cheers.
speaking, Robert.
Thanks.